The sky was burning, not with the soft glow of sunset or the gentle flicker of distant lightning, but with a living, devouring flame that swallowed clouds and painted the heavens in crimson. The air itself screamed as wings the size of mountains tore through it, casting shadows over a dying world. Villages turned to ash in seconds. Rivers boiled. Stone cracked like brittle glass under the unbearable heat. And at the center of it all was the dragon, Veilrith, the last flame. Its scales shimmered like molten metal, each breath a storm of fire that reduced kingdoms to memory. Armies had tried to stop it. Thousands of soldiers, siege weapons, ancient magic, but none of it mattered. Nothing could stand before a creature that had outlived empires. To the world, Veilrith was destruction given form, a god of fire, a monster without mercy. But the world didn't know the truth. The city of Aelwyn fell in less than an hour. Its great towers collapsed like sandcastles. Its banners burned before they could even fall. The screams of its people faded quickly, drowned out by the roar of flames and the thunder of wings. When the fire finally began to die down, nothing remained but smoke, embers, and silence. A silence so complete it felt wrong, unnatural, like the world itself had stopped breathing. In the center of the ruins, beneath a shattered archway, a child stood. He was small, no more than 10 winters old. His clothes were torn, his face smudged with ash, and his bare feet rested on stones still warm from the fire. He should have been afraid. Anyone would have been. But he wasn't. Veilrith landed. The ground trembled as its massive body touched the earth, cracks spreading outward like veins. Smoke curled from its nostrils as it surveyed the destruction, its destruction, with ancient, burning eyes. Everything was gone, as it always was. That was the way of things. That was all that remained. Then it saw him, the boy, standing there, alive. For a moment, the dragon did not move. It did not breathe. It simply watched. Humans always ran. They screamed, begged, fought, anything to escape the inevitable. Even the bravest warriors trembled in its presence. But this one did none of those things. The boy took a step forward. The movement was small, fragile, insignificant, and yet it was enough to still the storm. "You're alone too, aren't you?" The words were soft, barely louder than the crackling of dying embers, but they struck harder than any weapon. Veilrith froze. It had heard countless human voices before, shouts of defiance, cries of terror, prayers to gods that would never answer. But never this, never understanding, never empathy. The dragon lowered its head slightly, a movement so subtle it could have been mistaken for the shifting of shadows. The boy didn't run. Instead, he stepped closer. "I don't have anyone left," the boy said quietly. His voice didn't shake, didn't break. It was too empty for that. "They're all gone." The dragon's eyes flickered. Something deep within them, something buried beneath centuries of fire and ruin, shifted. The boy reached out, a small hand, covered in ash, trembling just slightly. "You don't have to be alone." Time seemed to stop. Veilrith stared at the hand, at the fragile, fleeting creature offering something it had not known in longer than memory. It could have burned him, could have ended him in a single breath, as it had ended countless others. It would have been easy, natural, inevitable, but it didn't. Slowly, carefully, the dragon lowered its head, closer, closer still, until its burning gaze met the boy's. And for the first time in centuries, the fire dimmed. "My name is Arian," the boy said softly. The dragon did not speak. It could not. But something passed between them in that moment, something beyond words, something ancient, something fragile. Arian smiled. It was a small smile, broken, but real. And just like that, the world changed. The fire stopped, not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually, as if the inferno itself had simply lost the will to burn. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and somehow, impossibly, life began to return. Arian stayed. He spoke to the dragon as if it were human, telling stories, asking questions, filling the silence that had once consumed everything. Veilrith listened, always listened. Seasons passed. The boy grew, and the dragon remained. For the first time in its endless existence, Veilrith was not alone. But time does not spare humans. Years later, Arian stood at the edge of the mountain, older now, taller, wiser, but still carrying that same quiet strength. The wind tugged at his cloak as he looked out over a world slowly healing. "I have to go," he said. Veilrith did not move, but the air grew heavier. "I won't live forever," Arian continued, placing a hand against the dragon's scales. "But this isn't the end." Silence, then a smile. "I'll come back." The words were simple, human, fragile. "No matter how long it takes," he said, voice steady. "I promise." Veilrith watched him, memorized him, and believed him. Arian turned and walked away. The dragon did not follow. It simply waited, and as the years passed, and the world changed, and Arian faded into memory, Veilrith remained, unmoving, unchanging, waiting, for a promise only one human could keep. Dragon fire. The world did not remember him. Not truly. Stories faded, names twisted, truth turned into myth, then into warning, then into nothing at all. But the mountain remembered, and so did the dragon. Veilrith did not move. Not when the first winter came and buried the ruins in white. Not when spring returned, timid and uncertain, pushing green through ash. Not when new kingdoms rose in the distance, ignorant of what had once burned the sky. Time passed. It always did. At first, the waiting felt simple. Arian had said he would return. Humans left, and they came back. That was what they did. Days became months. Months became years. Veilrith remained at the peak where the boy had last stood, its massive form carved against the horizon like a monument to something forgotten. Its wings stayed folded. Its fire stayed quiet, but its gaze never left the path. Travelers began to notice. A lone merchant, crossing too far north, was the first to speak of it. "A dragon," he whispered when he returned, his voice shaking. "A giant one. It didn't attack, it just watched." No one believed him, until others came back with the same story. "It's still there. Doesn't move. Doesn't sleep." Rumors spread. A dragon that did not burn. A monster that did not kill. A god that simply waited. Of course, that only made it worse. Nights came, drawn by glory, by gold, by the promise of slaying the last flame and carving their names into history. They climbed the mountain in shining armor, banners snapping in the wind. They never reached the peak. Some turned back before they even saw the dragon. The air itself grew heavy as they climbed, thick with something ancient and suffocating. Their courage faltered. Their purpose blurred. Others made it farther. They saw Veilrith, and they understood. Not with words, not with logic, but with something deeper. They saw the stillness, the patience, the unbearable weight of something that had lasted far longer than it should have. Most dropped their weapons. Some wept. A few simply stood there until they realized they could not take another step forward. None attacked. None needed to. The dragon was not something to be fought. It was something to be endured, and no human could endure it. Years passed. Decades. Centuries. Kingdoms rose in the valleys below. Cities grew where forests once stood. New generations looked up at the mountain and saw nothing more than a distant peak, its legends reduced to half-remembered tales told to restless children. "Stay close to home," mothers warned, "or the dragon will take you." But the dragon did not come. It never came. It stayed, through storms that shattered stone, through lightning that split the sky, through winters so harsh even the mountains seemed to crack beneath them. Veilrith remained. Time changed everything. Even the dragon. The fire that once roared within its chest burned quieter now. Not gone, never gone, but dimmer like a fading star. Its scales, once gleaming like molten gold, darkened with age and ash. Its eyes, though still bright, carried something new. Not rage, not hunger. Something heavier, waiting, and beneath that waiting doubt. Humans did not live for 1,000 years. Veilrith knew this. It had always known. Arian had been different, but not that different. The memory of the boy remained clear, his voice, his smile, the warmth of his small hand against ancient scales. But memory was not reality, and reality was silence. Still the dragon did not leave, because of a promise. One day, a storm unlike any other came. The sky turned black, not with night, but with something deeper. Thunder rolled across the mountains like a living thing, and the wind howled with a fury that tore trees from their roots far below. Lightning struck the peak again and again, each bolt crashing against Velrith's unmoving form. The mountain itself trembled, but the dragon did not move, not an inch, as if even the wrath of the world could not shake what had been built on that single moment 1,000 years ago. When the storm finally passed, the sky cleared, and for a brief moment, the world was quiet. Velrith lifted its head, just slightly. Its gaze turned once more to the path. Empty, always empty. 1,000 years. 1,000 years of silence. And yet, the dragon still waited, because somewhere, buried beneath time and doubt and the endless march of years, there remained a single fragile belief that a human promise might be stronger than time. And far below the mountain, in a village that had never known fire, a child was born, and when he opened his eyes, for just a moment, they reflected something ancient, something that did not belong to this life, something that had been waiting just as long, and the world, though it did not know it yet, was about to remember. Dragon fire. The boy dreamed of fire, not the kind that burned, not the kind that destroyed, but something warmer, something alive. In his dreams, the sky was always red. Ash drifted like snow, settling on broken stone and silent ruins. The air shimmered with heat, yet he never felt pain. Instead, there was a strange comfort in it, like standing too close to a hearth on a cold night. And in the distance, something waited. Cale woke with a gasp. His chest rose and fell rapidly as the last traces of the dream slipped through his mind like smoke. Again, the same dream. Always the same. "You're doing it again," his sister muttered from across the small room, rolling over with a groan. "Talking in your sleep." Cale wiped his face. Wet. He hadn't even realized he was crying. "I'm fine," he said quietly. But he wasn't. The dreams had been coming for years. At first, they were nothing more than flashes, heat, light, a feeling he couldn't explain. But as he grew older, they became clearer, sharper, more real. And lately, they had started calling him. "You're not listening." Cale blinked, snapping back to the present. His father stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression stern. "You missed half the work today," the older man said. "Your head's always somewhere else." Cale looked down at his hands. Rough, calloused, human. "I'm sorry." His father sighed, the anger fading into something closer to worry. "You keep staring at those mountains," he said, glancing toward the distant peaks visible through the window. "There's nothing there, Cale. Just rock and snow." Cale didn't answer, because he knew that wasn't true. At night, when the village slept, he would stand outside and look north, toward the mountains. And every time, his chest tightened, not with fear, but with longing, like something was missing, like something was waiting. "I think I have to go." The words slipped out before he could stop them. His father froze. "What?" Cale swallowed. "I don't know why, but I feel it. Something's up there. Something important." Silence filled the room. Heavy. Unforgiving. "People don't come back from those mountains," his father said finally, his voice low. "You know that." "I know." "Then why would you even think?" "Because it feels like I already have." The words hung in the air. Strange. Impossible. His father stared at him for a long moment, then turned away. "Get some sleep," he said quietly. "You're not thinking clearly." But Cale didn't sleep. That night, the dream came again. Only this time, it was different. He stood in the ruins once more, the air thick with ash, the sky burning above him. But this time he wasn't alone. A shadow moved, massive, ancient, and then, eyes, golden, burning, watching him. Cale didn't run. Instead, he stepped forward. "You're alone too, aren't you?" The words left his mouth before he could stop them. The world froze. The dragon stilled. And in that moment something broke. Memories, not his, but somehow his, flashed through his mind. A boy. A promise. A hand reaching out. "I'll come back." Cale gasped, stumbling backward as the vision shattered. He woke just before dawn. And this time, he knew. "I'm going." The journey began before the sun rose. He didn't tell anyone, didn't say goodbye. Because if he did, he knew he wouldn't be able to leave. The path north was harsh, unforgiving. Days turned into weeks as Cale climbed higher, the air growing thinner, colder. Snow replaced grass. Silence replaced sound. But he didn't stop, because the closer he got, the stronger it became. That pull, that feeling, like something at the top of the world was calling his name. You're close. The thought wasn't his, but it didn't scare him. It guided him. And finally, after days of climbing, of slipping and stumbling and pushing forward when his body begged him to stop, he reached the peak. And there, it stood, the dragon, vast, still, unmoving, its wings folded like stone, its form carved into the mountain itself. For a moment, Cale thought it was dead. Then he felt it, a presence so immense it stole the air from his lungs. Alive, watching, waiting. For him, Cale's heart pounded as he stepped forward. I don't know who you are, he whispered, his voice trembling despite himself. But I think I'm supposed to be here. The wind howled. Snow swirled. The dragon did not move. Cale took another step, then another, until he stood close enough to see the faint glow beneath its scales, close enough to reach out. His hand trembled, not with fear, but with something deeper, recognition. I don't understand, he said softly, but I feel like I know you. His fingers brushed against the dragon's scales, and the world shattered. Fire, ash, a boy standing in ruins, a promise echoing through time. I'll come back. Cale fell to his knees as the memories crashed over him, and behind him, for the first time in 1,000 years, the dragon breathed. Dragon fire. The world did not break all at once. It cracked, like ice under pressure, like something buried too deep, finally forcing its way to the surface. Cale's hand remained pressed against the dragon's scales, but it no longer felt like his own. Fire surged through him. Not pain, not heat, memory. Ash filled the air. The sky burned red, and he was standing there again, not as Cale, but as someone else. A boy, barefoot in ruin, looking up at something vast and ancient. You're alone too, aren't you? The words echoed across time. Cale staggered, his breath catching in his throat. No, that's not me. But it was. The dragon lowered its head. Closer, closer still, golden eyes meeting his own. My name is Arian. The memory spoke through him. Not something he remembered, something he was. Cale dropped to his knees. The mountain spun around him as the past and present collided, overlapping, tearing into each other like two worlds trying to exist in the same space. I came back, he whispered, voice breaking. For 1,000 years. That moment had been waiting. And now, it was here. Behind him, something shifted. A deep, ancient sound. Breath. The first breath in 1,000 years. The air trembled as Veilrith inhaled, fire flickering faintly between its teeth. Not roaring, not raging, waking. Cale Arian felt it before he saw it. That presence, that weight, that endless, patient waiting finally ending. Slowly, terrifyingly slowly, the dragon's eyes opened, gold, burning brighter than the sun, and locked onto him, not as a stranger, not as prey, but as something it had known once and never forgotten. Arian. The name wasn't spoken, not aloud, but it echoed through Cale's mind like thunder. Recognition. Pure. Absolute. Unmistakable. Cale's chest tightened as tears blurred his vision. I didn't mean to forget, he said, voice trembling. I didn't even know. I didn't understand. The dragon moved. The mountain groaned under the weight of it as Veilrith lifted its head fully for the first time in centuries. Snow slid from its wings. Ice cracked along its scales. The world itself seemed to shift around it. And yet, there was no fire, no destruction, only movement, only life. I told you I'd come back, Cale whispered. I said it, didn't I? The memory surged again. A younger voice. A promise spoken at the edge of a fading life. No matter how long it takes, I'll find you again. Cale clenched his fists, tears falling freely now. It just took longer than I thought. Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with everything that had been lost, and everything that had endured. Veilrith lowered its head, slowly, carefully. Not as a king, not as a god, but as something far older than either, something that had waited. Kale didn't move. He couldn't, because he understood now. Not just the memory, not just the promise, but the weight of it. 1,000 years. 1,000 years of silence, of stillness, of believing in something that should have faded. All for this moment. All for him. "I'm here," he said softly. The dragon's massive head came to rest before him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from it, close enough that the distance of 1,000 years felt like nothing at all. Kale reached out. This time, his hand didn't tremble. When his fingers touched the dragon's scales again, it felt familiar, not new, not strange. Home. Veilrith's eyes dimmed slightly, the blazing fire within them softening into something quieter, something gentler. Relief. The kind that only comes after waiting longer than anything should ever have to. The mountain was silent. No wind, no storm, just the sound of two beings who had found each other again against everything time had tried to erase. "I won't leave again," Kale said quietly. It wasn't a promise spoken lightly. It wasn't the naive certainty of a child. It was something deeper, something stronger, because now he understood what it meant to be gone, and what it meant to return. Veilrith exhaled, a slow, steady breath. Not fire, warmth, the kind that didn't destroy, the kind that stayed. Far below the mountain, the world continued as it always had, unaware, unknowing. Kings ruled, wars brewed, people lived and died without ever realizing what had just changed. But something had changed, something ancient had ended, and something new had begun. For the first time in 1,000 years, the dragon was no longer waiting, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, the promise had been kept. Dragon fire. The world felt it before it saw it. A shift, subtle but undeniable. The winds changed direction. The skies grew heavier. And somewhere deep in the bones of the earth, something ancient stirred. Whispers spread across kingdoms like wildfire. The mountain, the dragon, it's awake. Fear followed quickly after, because the world remembered only one thing about dragons. They burned everything. Kings called their armies. Messengers rode day and night. Old alliances were reforged, not out of trust, but out of desperation. "The last flame has risen," they said, "and this time it won't stop." Thousands of soldiers gathered at the base of the mountain. Steel gleamed beneath gray skies. War banners snapped in the wind. Mages whispered spells older than the kingdoms themselves. They came ready for destruction, ready for war. But the mountain remained silent. At the peak, Kale stood beside Veilrith. The wind tugged at his cloak as he looked down at the army forming below. "They're afraid," he said quietly. Veilrith did not move. But Kale felt the response, deep, steady, and vast. "They always are." Kale exhaled slowly. "I don't want them to see you like that," he said. "Like a monster." A pause. "That is what I was." Kale shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "That's what they made you into. That's what they remember." The dragon said nothing, but its gaze shifted. Down the mountain, toward the army. Waiting. Kale stepped forward. "I'll talk to them." The moment his foot touched the slope, Veilrith moved. Wings unfolded. Not in fury, not in attack, but in presence. The sky darkened as the massive shape rose, casting a shadow over the world below. Gasps rippled through the army. Weapons lifted. Spells ignited. "Hold your ground," a general shouted. "Do not let it reach the valley." Veilrith did not descend. It hovered, watching, and beside it, a single human figure began to walk down the mountain. Confusion spread through the ranks. "Is that a boy? Move aside." Kale stopped just beyond the front lines. Thousands of eyes locked onto him. Fear, suspicion, disbelief. And behind him, a dragon that could erase them all with a single breath. "We're not your enemy," Kale said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, because in that moment, the world was listening. "No one believes that," someone shouted from the crowd. "It's a trick. Kill it before it kills us." Weapons rose. Magic crackled. And for a moment, it felt like history was about to repeat itself. War, fire, ash. Kale closed his eyes, then stepped forward. "If it wanted to destroy you," he said, louder now, stronger. You wouldn't be standing here. Silence fell, because they knew it was true. The dragon had been awake long enough. If it wanted war, this wouldn't be a standoff. This would be the end. Kale turned, looking back at Vaelrith. Show them. The dragon descended. Slowly, deliberately. Not like a predator, not like a god, but like something choosing restraint. The ground trembled as Vaelrith landed just beyond the army, close enough to remind them of its power, far enough to prove it wouldn't use it. No fire came, no destruction, only stillness, the kind that weighed heavier than any attack. A soldier stepped forward, then another, hesitant, terrified. Why? One of them asked, voice shaking. Why haven't you killed us? Kale looked at them, then at the dragon, and for a moment, he saw it all again. The ruins, the fire, the loneliness, the promise. Because it was waiting, he said softly. The soldiers frowned, confused. For what? The general demanded. Kale placed a hand against Vaelrith's scales. For someone who showed it kindness, he said. For someone who didn't see a monster. Murmurs spread through the crowd. That's impossible. It's a dragon. They don't feel. Kale met their eyes. You're wrong. He turned back to Vaelrith. And now, it doesn't have to wait anymore. The dragon exhaled. A slow, steady breath. Warm air swept across the battlefield. Not scorching, not destructive. Gentle, like the fading heat of a fire that no longer needed to burn. And in that moment, something changed. Not in the dragon, in the humans. Because for the first time, they saw it. Not as a weapon, not as a beast, but as something that had endured, something that had remembered, something that had kept faith in a promise no one else believed could matter. The general lowered a sword. Then, slowly, others followed, one by one, until the battlefield was silent. No war, no fire, only understanding. Kale smiled faintly, and far above, the clouds began to part. Light broke through for the first time that day. Not harsh, not blinding, warm, hopeful. The world would take time to understand, time to accept, time to change. But it would, because stories would spread, not of destruction, not of fear, but of something far more powerful. A dragon that waited 1,000 years for a promise, and a human who came back to keep it. And from that day forward, the world remembered something it had long forgotten. Even dragons remember kindness, and some promises are stronger than time itself. Dragon fire,